afternoon. I see our attendees are starting to sign in. While we allow a few moments for the rest to sign in, you can make use of the chat function just to pop us a message with your name and where you are signing in from this afternoon. So for those of you that have just signed in, a warm welcome to you. We are allowing the participants a moment to get on. While we do that, please make use of the chat function. Just pop us a message with your name and where you're signing in from. We have Juanita from the Eastern Cape, Leon Roots from UNISA in Pretoria. We have Tracy from Pretoria. Welcome, everyone. We will just give it a few moments before we begin the session. And for those of you who have just signed in, please pop us a message with your name and where you are signing in from. We once again have Annie from Sweden. Welcome. Thank you for signing in again. We are just going to give it a moment more before we begin the session. So if you've just signed in, please pop us a message and let us know who you are and where you are signing in from. We have Yadeline Kutsia from Stellenbosch University, Sinobo Kushle from the Eastern Cape. I hope I've said your name correct. Guys, it looks like we are ready to begin today. We have Prof. Nokutula Mazibuko from UNISA, Tereso from Pretoria. Welcome, everyone. We also have Sarah joining us from Walden University. Thank you, Sarah. With that being said, I'm going to just quickly introduce you to two of the hosts today, and that would be Juanita Cup and Leon Roots from UNISA. Leon is the program convener of postgraduate programs of social and behavior studies, HIV/AIDS within the HIV and AIDS within the Department of Sociology. He's also the program manager of Teresana Collaborative Projects, focusing on the advocacy and diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion in communities, curriculum, and workplaces. And then we have Pastor Juanita Karp, who is an ordained minister in the Full Gospel Church. She also currently serves as Vice President of the Golden Key International Honor Society Alumni Committee in the Eastern Cape. Welcome, everyone. Over to you, Juanita.
Thank you, Natasha. A warm welcome today to all our attendees. We are so appreciative of your attendance to this webinar today, and we can see how we have, over the course of the webinars, just grown into a close-knit family of people who want to actively do something against the gender-based violence problem in our society. I'm joined today by our collaborative partners from UNISA, Vitality, Wellness, Self-AIDS, and Father and Nation, and it has been such a privilege to work with these wonderful, wonderful individuals who have given so much input and heart and passion into curbing the phenomenon of gender-based violence. And I think if we look back over the webinar series, there was definitely points that we had experienced growth spurts and that we already started formulating on a way forward. So for today, we are going to discuss gender-based violence in Africa, lessons learned and actions. And it is since the beginning, we've said, together with Leon Roots from UNISA and our other collaborative partners and panelists, we've said that we want to work towards a plan, formulate a plan of action in order not to just give more information about gender-based violence, but to also formulate a structure and a plan for a way ahead. So today the format will be as follows. The house rules are as follows. We're going to discuss with the panel the information that they would like to share for us on lessons learned and actions that they would suggest, after which we're going to engage with the attendees, where we are going to give you the opportunity where we can possibly unmute and put your video on to introduce yourself and share with us what you experienced and learned through this webinar series. I will now be handing over to Mr. Leon Roots from UNISA to give us some shared lessons and actions for the way forward. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you, Anita, for that overview. I think just before we start to come into the lessons learned, let us just reflect on all the webinars that we went through the last month and a half. So I want to just say to everyone who have been able to attend this session and who are regularly with us, we really appreciate you. We can feel your presence, and we can also feel your spirit of the passion that you have for this concern and big problem that we have in our society, that not only South Africa is affected, but also the issue of, at the end of the day, it is about also finding our spaces in the understanding that this pandemic, as we can call it even, and sometimes I like what Professor Nkutula say, it's a femicide. That it has to do with something that is actually really out of control, and we need to step up. Because in South Africa, if you watch our news, you'll see in many spaces that nearly on a weekly basis, we report something like nearly 5 cases in the news that are concurrently running that talks about gender-based violence. And it's also sometimes into the worst spaces where people have died. And we see it even in different forms. We see it, a mother killing her children. We see an intimate partner beating up their loved ones. We see child abuse, child neglect, where children are left in places by their parents, like in public toilets. We have heard a lot about even babies being picked up, their newly born babies, and then people have to be followed up and fined and being prosecuted for neglect. Then we see a lot of cases about femicide where women have died due to gender-based. So it means at the end, when we have seen over the 11 sessions that we have up to date, that we had to unpack it because we need to show how complex it is, and also that not one recipe fits all, and that we need to sit down in our communities and we need to find with our communities the solutions. Because it's one thing to talk on this platform, it's another thing to really make things happen. And that is where we need everyone in this room to become that agent of change. That we need to step up and we need to start talking at home, because you might be surprised that at home there are victims already of gender-based violence. Your children might have experienced bullying. Your love partner might have had in a previous relationship bad experiences due to gender-based violence, or you yourself might have even been a victim of rape or attempted murder even. And these things we just don't talk about, and they creep up and they build up, and eventually they break us down as a human. And that means that we need to just start at home and then start looking just around us. Because I'm a firm believer that there's a reason why all of us are now here on this time, in this space together. There's a purpose and there's a meaning why we are here. And that means we need to look around the world around us through the same lens. Whoever pass your path, there's a reason why they are there in the same time, in the same space as you are. And it might be that they are hurt, that they are in pain, and that they cannot talk to anybody. So if we start just to appreciate people around us, even the strangers. My dad always said, a stranger is just a friend you don't know. And that is often true, because I've become actually very good friends with people that I never thought I would become friends, just by greeting them, by asking them how they are, and just hearing them. And then the friendship started, and it's long-lasting and often life friends. I remember when I met Nkutula, we were 2 academics in one department, and we felt passionate about gender issues. And we just said, you know what, let's start doing something. And out of that, we developed a very beautiful friendship that I'm very appreciating. And even with Edith, I got to know her when I traveled to Harare, and I was there when we were still working together on the Swedish project. And this is how we built our network and our family here. So when we look at the webinars on the 30th August, we start to look at the critical engagement, to look at what does it mean in the African context? Because we are located, most of us are in Africa. South Africa is part of Africa. So not the other way around, because sometimes people think there's South Africa and then there's rest of Africa. And that's really a no-no, because we all Africa. And that means that we had to talk to each other there by unpacking. And we really went into a deep discussion with Professor Nkutula and Craig Wilkinson on understanding it from different angles, how complex it is. And one thing that stood out is that there's no profile. There's no exact profile to say this is a typical person who might become or is a victim of gender-based violence. But even the perpetrator doesn't have a profile, because it could be any one of us. And then the message was also clear that sadly, most of the things to move must come from men. And that we as men, we must step into this space. But we must also recognize that our men are not able to do this alone. And that's what the second webinar is, when we start to look at understanding the bigger picture of conflict and violence, when we start to see that we live in a very violent society, and even in spaces where some of our colleagues who come from Sweden, which is often seen as the most integrated society, the most gender mainstream society, I have heard many cases of even gender-based violence happening there. And that means that it's not isolated into one space, it's a global phenomenon. And then we also see that often it comes from points of conflict, that conflict often rise into violence, and then it escalates into spaces of gender-based violence too. Then we looked at the understanding that how does it play out in our families, our households, our workplaces. And Edith really helped us to unpack the responsibility of the workplace to respond, and then to also bring in the conversation with sub-aides, Teresa, to bring in that communities must also step up to become again the space of care, because we have lost that ability in our communities to actually really become a community of care. Then we deconstructed the gender norms and roles within gender-based violence within the African context. We unpacked the issue of cultural expectation, traditions, language. We unpacked the role of religion. We unpacked the whole understanding of ethnicity, of homophobia that even comes into places like this, that some people say being an LGBTI person is an African thing, that it doesn't belong to Africa, it came from the West. And it's not true, because we then really interrogate that space, that gender construction was an equal space, it was a harmony space, but it was distorted by relationships of power. And then we moved on to the next section, where we really unpacked the issue of manhood, masculinity, and how does it link to gender-based violence. We spoke a bit about the toxic man, and also the issue of manhood, that there's a pathway to manhood that comes from different angles. And at the end of the day, how we as men see ourselves is often through the eyes of the other, older man or woman, or even how the media portray us as a man, and what sometimes is conflicting traditions even have shaped us in this space. Then we went to our next session, and our next session really tried to look at the nature and types of gender-based violence. And there, Lizette unpacked it for us, that there are so many types of gender-based violence, but at the end of the day, it has to boil down to three major parts. The one is somebody feel that something is not right. You don't feel comfortable, or you feel violated, or you feel that something is not right, what's happening. But then it's also about power. How does power relationship of dominating other person through psychosocial or through physical violence or through economical means come into play. But it also then escalates to the understanding that violence in the gender violence spaces is sometimes not as straightforward, because it could be a combination of things that people experience, and sometimes that combination leads to the femicide, the death of women in that space. And that means that even over above that, we need to pay attention to like intimate partner violence. Edith also spoke a lot about how does workplaces come in and challenge culture. And we talk even about workplace organizational culture, because a workplace can actually fester the whole culture that it's okay to actually dehumanize the other, dehumanize the women, dehumanize the LGBTI community, to dehumanize men that are not so masculine and patriarchal and male dominant. And that we see a lot in workplaces, and that it means that there's so much that needs to be done from that angle. Then we went through a whole process of looking at young adults, and Teresa gave a very nice overview from a personal point of view as a young person, how gender-based violence look in the communities. That even through places like social media, we start to see a huge increase of gender-based violence through cyberbullying, through stalking, through even body shaming, and even the whole thing of imaging that is happening in the social media spaces, but even amongst the peer. And then Pastor Janita also spoke about how does the church sometimes reinforce some of these things, and what is the role of the church to become a safe space where young people can actually feel that they can start to deal with gender-based violence. Then we had a very interactive session on the issue of harassment, and when does harassment become sexual. And we heard therefore Craig talking about that harassment was very important, that a lot of men do not know. And we got the message then from Edith then to say that in many places like workplaces, that harassment starts with somebody speaking out. Somebody say, I don't like what you're doing. I don't feel comfortable in what you're doing. And that it stops there. But often it becomes sexual, and sometimes we keep quiet from the sexual side because we see it as normal. We justify it through our manhood, or we justify it through our womanhood, because we also know there's harassment, sexual harassment of women towards men in workplaces, or even sugar mummies in the communities that are out there. Then we came to the whole thing of what can we start to think? And this is when we turn it around and say, but here we are as a community of practice, as a community. What can we start to do? And then we had a long discussion from a religious point of view, where Jonita showed us some Bible verses to use to actually respond to this. And for people who are Christian, that is very important, because you have to fight fire with fire. So you have to have those verses ready so that you can show to people that it's not in the Bible justified. And at the end, that is how you actually fight this battle too, is by showing that the Bible is misread and misused by many. Then we heard from Teresa also the importance of communities that has to start creating a space for people to speak out, to find safety, and to feel cared in the community. And that means we need to mobilize all the networks in the communities to start working together. And then on Friday, last Thursday, we came to say, okay, let's step back and let's put now a bigger picture on the table, and let's just see what is our role. And Maneka came in from a very interesting point to say that every sector must contribute, and everybody has a role to play. And we're part of a jigsaw puzzle. So if our piece is not there, the puzzle can never be completed, and we cannot be a force to be reckoned. And this is the problem. Not everybody plays their role in the jigsaw puzzle. So we have not completed it, and that's why we are here today. So for today is to start to say, okay, as a network here, as people who have been active in this space, what is it that we can do? So my lessons learned from this session is it's really important to talk about it. But talk is very cheap if it doesn't translate into action. And that means we need to think on the way forward. What action can we, as a network that represents from different African countries? I see there's people from Ghana, Zimbabwe, there's people from Sweden, there's people from South Africa here. So what can we collectively start to do? Because we create the ripple effect in the dam. If you throw the rock, in the water, you'll see that ripple effect. Because we cannot change the bigger picture ourselves, the ripple effect will. But we can start small and make the wave. And then the second lesson that I've learned is I've met incredible people here with a beautiful heart. And that is what is needed. We need to get the heart back into this conversation because it's about our humanity. And it's about anchoring ourselves in our humanity, because everything else, gender, class, religion, culture, age, whatever, is social constructions. And we can deconstruct. We can change it, but we need everybody to do it with us as a collective. So that's my overview, Janita.
Thank you so much, Leon. It's amazing all the lessons that have transpired from here. And as you went through the sessions, I've just relived the journey. And it's something that I will always be thankful for, that I could be a part of it with all of the panelists and presenters and the attendees. It has been a journey. It has been a progress. And it's true. We have to look at the fact that we are humanity, we are human, and we have to restructure and reformulate and start again, and it has to come from the heart. So absolutely, thank you for the lessons that you've shown us and the overview. We needed that recap to get us on track for our session today as well. And it speaks to our hearts. It's going to affect our lives from this day on forward and change us, I believe, into better individuals in the long run. I would now like to speak to Professor Nokuthula Masibuko. She has a PhD in Sociology, Master of Arts in School Sciences and Development Studies. She is currently the head of University of South Africa, UNISA Institute of Gender Studies, housed in the College of Human Sciences. And I would just like to ask Prof. Nokuthula, we've heard now from Leon that you presented also on this series. You've also taught us wonderful lessons from your point of view and from your experience. Would you please be so kind as to share with us the lessons that you have derived from this webinar series? Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Juanita. Sure, what's standing up for me has been the collaboration from different sectors. The certain series that I've attended, I got to learn the different work that our colleagues are doing from their sectors of psychology, education, religion, and so on. And what stood for me is how we've defined the certain concept when it comes to gender-based violence. And then we emphasize the notion that any person, is at risk of becoming a victim, is at risk of becoming a perpetrator, because this risk has been enhanced from the process of socialization that takes place from birth. When the person announces that they are pregnant, the first thing comes in mind is, what are you expecting? And then you come to colors, your blue, your purple, not purple, because now purple is a neutral color, your blue or your pink, and what type of clothes the child will wear, the toys, then formulates to norms and values. And that is also emphasized through schooling and so on, higher education. It's emphasized in work, and it's emphasized when a person enters a relationship, your gender roles, what is expected of you when you enter intimate relations, work relations, how you're expected to carry yourself. And what was also incredible for me is that certain statistics that we've got to learn, that people become victims of gender-based violence is the age. We looked at you become a victim or a perpetrator between the age, which is the ages of 18 to 35, which is mostly higher. And what was fascinating to me is that these are the ages or the age group that enters your higher education, that enters your intimate relations, enters work, or also relations with the becoming parents. So those are the things that were interesting to me, that whenever we look at gender-based violence, there is always a certain element or a certain thread that carries throughout, that it is to emphasize and carry power and control. So there's power element, there's control element. So those were the lessons for me. And what was very fascinating was the last week series to me, when we looked at violence and relations, that so much of emphasis on attention has been provided to victims. And, there has been much emphasis on perpetrators. The work that one of the colleagues was who was focusing on, looking at the perpetrators that had this person been raised, socialized in a different family setup, they would not have committed to the gruesome acts that were gender-based violence. So that to me stood up, in a sense that it looked at the violence and relations, and also the narrative that people out there, the communities, always have when they hear of incidents of GBV, is that why didn't she leave, or why didn't he leave? Making it exit as the only solution, but one has to be understanding that all the complexities that we've highlighted here, that it is not as easy as one may suggest, that exiting a relationship will be a solution, because also this is when perpetrators sense their grip of not having control, not having power on the person. That way it escalates to what my colleague Leon was suggesting earlier, that we've heard of femicide, the brutal killing of women, and the purpose killing of women. So we've had all of these these talks, discussions during this series, and what was standing to me is that, we understand that we hear and see the killing, and which is driven by the notion of, if I can't have you, nobody can. And we've observed that it has escalated to the dismantling of corpses, whereby families are left to bury a certain body parts or body remains of their loved ones. And then my colleague Managa on Thursday last week mentioned the multi-sectors that should be encouraged to work together. And the judiciary, for me, was the one that's was standing up in the sense, and the police and the education, which, I mean, the higher education, I should also look into that. But you know, when we hear of these cases, no one has also been sentenced for dismantling of a corpse. We hear of, you know, the sentencing is motivated by murder, that a person gets to spend certain years in prison and so on. But the dismantling, because families are left with a burden of having the images of their loved one as just the remains of them, and that's the image that lasts forever. We've been conformed to understanding a corpse as a well structured, without any body parts being missing. But now we are in a verge of understanding femicide and other risk factors after femicide, which are, you know, burning of corpse, body parts being dismantled and thrown in garbage bins and burnt in plastic bags and so on. So we, you know, no one hear the impact of the families, the ones who are left with the impact of those images. So for me, the way forward in this sense is that if we were to involve ourselves into reaching out, conducting a project, a research project, community project, whereby we look specifically to the impact of families who were affected by gender-based violence, who, in the sense, they have lost their loved one through femicide, and they have, some have one or few remains to bury. How that impacts them, I would be interested if we were to collaborate in such work, because in this series we've learned of colleagues being sociologists, looking at the social element of this, the cultural, the religious, and so on. And we've heard of colleagues being psychologists, clinical psychologists. We want to understand what is the impact, because no one hears the families. No one hears the families of victims. And probably also to look at the forensic that our colleague last week was talking about, perhaps also to hear what are the perpetrators, the families of perpetrators, how are they impacted, what they missed, what were the signs and how they missed the signs, what role could they have had in order to prevent the outcome, because no one wins in the sense. No one wins. The perpetrators, they've lost, although they have one of the benefits to visit their loved ones in prison, but it's not as common and normal as they know. But also we want to hear the victims. So if we were to do a study on the comparison or understanding of these families and how they're impacted by gender-based violence, this is the emotional violence that they live with. Okay. Leon, you touched on, I may have not been in the other one, of language being a factor that also instigate violence later on, where a person uses a tone of belittling, undermining, and so on, that start off and escalate to physical violence. And then these are the people, either as victims, either as perpetrators, who have shown a lack of skills to solve conflicts. which enhance violence or enhance normalization of violence. Because, if one has lack of skills of solving conflict, they resort to violence or resort to accepting violence, stating violence. We visit high schools and high school learners. Some of them already have an ideology that they are to date violence. If a boy doesn't do this, if a girl does not do this, therefore they don't love me enough. If they don't show jealousy, they don't love me enough. So my colleague Leon and I, we've visited certain schools which certain elements were coming up, and teenage pregnancy also was coming up. Another project that I want to speak to you about, if it's possible, as a way forward, is that we can implement is looking at sexual harassment in the workplace, exchange of sex for jobs, exchange of sex for marks, whether it's school marks, higher education marks, exchange for sex for promotion, exchange of sex for promotion. So those are the things that I would say, we can engage and look at as possible project, especially looking at this, living in today's world where we are affected by 2 pandemics, gender-based violence, as well as COVID-19. That is what is coming to my mind. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Professor, for your wonderful insights. Absolutely, we agree. And this whole series and this whole journey with you has been fantastic with every single person who has participated. And I agree with you, we should be employing and rolling out research and more information about information gathering about sexual harassment and more projects. I agree completely. We've now stirred the foundation a little bit, I'd say. I was thinking as you were speaking and as Leon was speaking, Prof, that we can't change the past. We cannot bring back the lives that were lost through gender-based violence. We cannot bring back the lives that were shattered. We cannot rebuild those people that have fallen, but we can do something about the families. We can do something in the now. We've seen that it's been brought forward by Managa and Setu and the other presenters that this is a deeply complex social issue and challenge, mostly due to the lack of reporting. We've shattered that stigmatization now, and we've learned that it's not only a factor of where people lose their lives, but the other effects of those that stay behind are so far-reaching, because for the rest of their lives, their futures are affected. There is a religious aspect, there's a social aspect, there is an emotional aspect. Even men that we learned last week, men that are affected by GBV, they have tendencies where they go into substance abuse. And then it was very true what you also touched on just now, is that these perpetrators are actually in their lives, through the trauma that they experience, they are conditioned. They are socialized to be that way, and that now has an effect on the rest of humankind. So I agree with you completely. I really feel that we should be enrolling new projects, do as much research as possible. There's a lovely network that has been established, as has been discussed by Leon, as well as yourself, Professor, and I think we shouldn't stop here. Very important. I think we should realize today there's something that we can do now. There's something that we can do now, and that is to give the victims a voice by doing the research and employing new projects, but also to start with the future generations that are to come. To bring in, implement structures where we look after the young ones, the young minds of our children and our teenagers and our young adults, in order to make sure that the process doesn't keep on repeating itself. Because we learned last week, yes, there is a policy framework, but that is not an end in itself. So I'm very excited to see what is going to transpire from all of this. I know there's wonderful things to come. I would now like to hand over to Teresa Kanyane from SAF8. She's an MPH candidate, and she's currently working as a program officer for SAF8. And she's also a human rights advocate and facilitator. Teresa, please share your thoughts with us about the lessons learned during this webinar series. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Wanyita. You know, it's still amazing how we are on our 11th and our last session. So, you know, when you're actually discussing interesting things, I think time moves when you're discussing interesting things and you're learning more. Because for me, I feel like I learned more than I gave in these sessions. So it's one thing that actually really stood out for me. And one thing that really stood out for me was, you know, learning more on gender-based violence in conflicts. Because with COVID right now, a lot of GBV cases came out. And as Prof already mentioned, we don't even get to hear of anyone being sentenced. You know, we don't even get to hear of the side of the families. So that's what really stood out for me, because with COVID, we got to hear a lot, especially during webinar sessions that SAF8 are also doing. We get to hear how child marriage actually even resurrected from everything, how the Blessed Plessy mandate also came stronger than ever, and also the fact that gender-based violence affects everyone. Whether you're rich, whether you are poor, not even minding the kind of setting you are in. So gender-based violence, even in a workplace, you think these are our safe spaces, even in our churches, where it's supposed to be our safe spaces, our homes, you know, you get to learn that, okay, I've been focusing on understanding gender-based violence in a different context, but gender-based violence affects everyone. I feel like 90% of everyone in this world has somehow encountered gender-based violence, if it's either financial, emotional, physical, or psychological in some way. And these safe spaces, how to also ensure that our churches, our homes, our schools remain our safe spaces, where else we're also being abused by people in power at our churches, in our schools. You know, Prof mentioned how a lot of young women are sleeping with lecturers for marks, you know, and most of them, it's not because you're coming from a background where you are poor or a community that isn't supportive. You know, it's the power dynamics. When you get to that high level, it's the power dynamics. If you don't do as I say, you fail. Doesn't matter how much you study, doesn't matter how much you know your work. You know, the power dynamics now come into play. And then also, what really stood out for me is the language in which we use. We need to change the language in which we use, because itself is abusive. The language in which we use itself is so abusive, and the double standards that come with the communities. You know, they can appreciate something being done by someone else, but if it's done by someone within their community and it's the very same thing, like dress code, you know, it becomes different. If it's someone from Senton wearing shorts and their bras and they have their piercings, it's like, oh my goodness, that girl looks, you know, beautiful. They look somehow. But if it's someone from the village, you have your ears pierced, you have your belly button pierced, you get cursed. You start having names, you know, and so that's another thing. And also one thing that I've really, really learned from this is in as much as we have laws, our laws are not community oriented. They are not focusing on our community. They are here and our community is here. It's like how the WHO came about with the reorientating health services. It's a big mandate, but when it comes to facilities, there's still lack of accessibility. How do you reorient when there's no accessibility or availability of services in that health facility? You know, and the community level actions are needed. We need to go down to the community. We need to empower the community to understand gender-based violence. That is not only physical. It shouldn't only be looking at the physical, but also the emotional. We need to also educate on healthy relationships. What do we mean when we say a healthy relationship, and what we mean when we say a toxic relationship? Because they are similar. There are similar actions towards a healthy relationship and a toxic relationship. This person can be loving you loud, but this person also can be loving you loud and manipulating you. But how do you differentiate between those two? Because now we're even scared of falling into relationships, because if someone loves you loudly, you're like, that's a trap. And if it's someone abusing you, you feel like, okay, maybe I need to change something. And you now start, your self-worth becomes reduced. You now start feeling it's not him, it's me. I need to change certain things about myself. So it gets to those levels where we really need to embrace and educate and empower, especially young women and young men. We shouldn't just focus on young women, because at the same time, with a lot of policies, we are giving the power to, not even the power, we give the problems to young women. Protect yourself. Do these self-defense classes. Why not teach a young man not to do it in the beginning? Why would you give me a bulletproof vest whereas you're not even taking the gun from someone? And another thing, Craig emphasized on this a lot: positive masculinity, positive femininity, the role of a man, how to be a better father that your children need. Why can't you just love, serve and protect, give without expecting anything in return? Because that's another thing that leads to emotional abuse. You give with the expectations to say, you know what, I'm going to receive. And if you do not receive, you become angry. You do not know how to even resolve issues amicably. We need to teach our young men how to resolve issues amicably. I remember one session I was with you, Juanita, and you asked a question: can young men actually be taught to solve things amicably? How do you walk away from toxic situations and come back and resolve them in an amicable atmosphere? And I actually went and did a little bit more studying on that, and I realized it's possible, but we just need to empower. We just need to understand what we mean when we say this is the best way to communicate. So for me, those were the best lessons. And what I would also want to see going forward, as we already discussed a bit earlier, to say, well, let's have these sessions on a monthly basis, maybe to see what others are doing with the information that we actually gave. And also supporting Prof. Nokutula's idea to say, is it Prof. Nokutula? No, Prof. Edith, to say, let's have a study. Let's understand the impact, because broken people break other people. If we're just going to leave the families as broken as they are, it's going to become a cycle and it's never going to end. So let's understand them. And the possibility of having a lot of them referred, it's high, because you might come into contact with a child of that victim or a child of that person who was dismantled, also having vendetta in his mind, also having to say, when I grow up, I will revenge or I will avenge my father's death. But you might come across those things when you're doing your research, and you might be able to refer them to some psychological support. So that's for me to say, I'm supporting the two ideas that have been discussed. Let's have these sessions, and also let's partner up and do a study. And I've seen on the chat, there's one who's also doing a study on gender-based violence and the role of the churches. And I would really like to know more. So maybe we can just continue that in the chat, because we need to understand how our safe spaces become our toxic spaces, because this should be our safe spaces. I should be able to go to my pastor and cry if I'm having situations at home. But if my pastor is going to take advantage of that situation to, it's still going to go back in cycles, and we're never ever going to resolve this. So thank you so very much. And I've been very proud to be part of these sessions. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, Teresa. Thank you very much for your insights and lessons learned. And I see that everything that we are feeling in our hearts today is actually resonating with each other. I absolutely agree. Leon has suggested that our network come together once a month. I agree with that completely. We have to touch base. Professor Nokutula said, let us do a research. More research to assist the families and the victims. And Teresa, you have also suggested that we also look into the deeper religious aspect of this, because when we talk and when I hear you presenting, I felt in my heart, Teresa, it's so true what you are saying about the safe places. There are safe places that are there, but sometimes I don't know how the lines get crossed, and people are not they don't have the freedom to go and utilize those spaces because those spaces have become toxic. And that is the real problem with GBV. It has ciphered into every area of society. Nothing has been left untouched. And as you were speaking, I really felt in my heart, GBV is taking away our freedom as humans, because now all of a sudden there's so many things to look out for, and we have trust issues. We always think, okay, but I've heard this about this aspect, should I now, should I not? So in actual fact, indirectly, it's attacking our freedom as humans. It doesn't matter which religious disposition we are from, doesn't matter who we are. It matters that we are humankind and we all need to be loved and safe and cared for. So I really appreciate your insights through this whole webinar series. Thank you so much. We are so proud to have you on the network and on the team. And I agree, we should take this much, much further. This is for me only the start, Therese, so I'm sure you'll agree with me. This is only the start for us. I want to give over to Edith now. Let me just get to Edith's bio here. Edith is a senior development social scientist and strategist with organizational track record working in international organizations in Southern Africa and international. She is currently the lead and managing consultant for Vitality Wellness in Zimbabwe. And she has co-authored a book entitled Tales of Womanhood. So I give over to you, Edith, to give us those nuggets that you collected as we were conducting this webinar series. Thank you. I do look at the panel. I do not see Edith on at the moment. I think her internet connection might have dropped. While we wait for Edith to come back to us, please let me just reiterate that these webinar recordings will be available on Golden Key Southern Africa on our YouTube channel. So you are welcome to download it there. The speakers have also been on the network, have also been as kind as to share their PowerPoints and information with you. So should you be in a need of any of the PowerPoints that you've seen before, or you want some more information, I'm going to ask Natasha Maharaj, who's anchoring for us today, just to add the email address in the chat function. It is southafrica@goldenkey.org. If you need any of the resources, you are welcome to access it there. I see a wonderful comment here. Let me just see who wrote the comment. Tsepang said, Teresa, it's going very well. He or she is going to submit a dissertation next month. And they are grateful for the networks like these where people are using their voices to create an understanding on GBV. We agree, Tsepang. Thank you for everyone for portraying active citizenship and using your voices for such a great cause. Absolutely, we are so grateful to everyone who is here with us during the whole series, but also today on our last session for this webinar series. I have a question that I would like to address quickly to the panel before we move over and engage with the attendees. Attendees, just a reminder, today we will be able to unmute you should you want to answer or ask a question or make a comment. We really want to engage in dialogue with you. Patricia Mapipi says, how are victims supposed to get justice when there is a backlog in DNA testing? When there is a backlog in DNA testing, is there someone on the panel that would like to take this question? I'll repeat, how are victims supposed to get justice when there is a backlog in DNA testing? Anyone? Can I direct this question?
This question is directed to the lack of resources. That in South Africa we don't have as many forensic laboratories as we wish. The backlog is because of that lack of resource. That these testings are done in Pretoria, they're done in Cape Town, and whereas in other provinces, that's where the act happened. And there's also possibilities of samples being lost or becoming mixed up. There have been Leon and I, in 2018, we invited the Minister of Police at the time, or he still is the Minister, Honorable Peggy Cele, to come to the University of South Africa to deliver a lecture on gender-based violence. And he was among other presenters, such as the CEO of Human Rights Commission, Advocate Silitso. And we're looking at the impact of gender-based violence. And I personally, requested that, with the amount of budget that is allocated for police and other sectors, perhaps we should consider having the laboratories built in all 9 provinces, than having to say that there has been a backlog, and due to that there is evidence becoming lost or missing and so on, that also implicate the success of the sentencing or their lack of. So I personally requested that at the time, and even written something about the way that we should consider having those things. And the justice, justice in the sense when a person has lost their loved one, I don't think it can be any external solution, in the sense we request and we are supposed to receive justice for our loved one, and in our sense is, things must run smoothly, a person must be found guilty and they must be sentenced, they have taken a life and their life must be taken, which in the sense they also have to spend the rest of their lives in prison. But I would also believe that when we focus more on external factors, we also raise ourselves for disappointments because things don't go the way we want. In that sense, I say that justice becomes something that you as a victim out to find healing there, healing from a situation that your loved one was murdered. No one is accountable for their murder. Healing in a sense that there are lack of resources within our police system and lack of empathy from the police, and therefore, the onus is on you. I personally say this because I like to reflect on my own personal experience. The murder of my brother, who's born after me, that we as a family or individually, we don't sit down and reflect on this because it's just too painful. That in our own spaces, you find or you make a way for yourself on how you deal with the lack of that we expect, lack of justice, of our loved one. And some people say time heals, and no such a thing as time heals, because it depends on what we do with that time, and the memory is still there, the images are still there, and we have to live with those. Hence, I suggested that we in our future planning, considering the impact, what is the impact of families who are, families of victims. So I think if we just look at it as an external factor, I'm afraid we are setting ourselves for disappointment. Thank you, Juanita.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. Yes, and I think because we are on such a backlog in South Africa, that is also, interfering with the statistics ultimately, and we just have to be inventive and think outside of the box as a team and as attendees, and try and curb this evil cycle that has been progressing underneath our noses for so long, and eventually it became something that we noticed. What Teresa said was so important also earlier today is that we have to not give bulletproof vests, we have to take out the bullet out of the gun and dispel of both of it completely. Patricia Mapipi, who answered the question, says, thank you, Professor Nokotula. Thank you for your insight. Yes, justice needs to be all-rounded. Sometimes it's just so devastating when the mechanisms that we put in place don't seem to function. Absolutely. I see Edith Masihofa Tapfuma has rejoined. Edith, I'm going to give over to you. I have already introduced you to the panel and the attendees, so you are welcome to share lessons learned from this webinar series. Thank you, Edith.
Thank you, Anita. Apologies, everyone. I'm not feeling very well today, but it's been excellent. The past 10 sessions that we've had, we've unpacked and looked at GBV causes from the community into various spheres, and also including the workplace. And I would say for me, the greatest learning that has come out of the discussions for addressing sexual and gender-based violence in the workplace is that we need commitment from the leadership within the workplace. We need the management to walk the talk and to make a commitment that their workplaces become spaces where they have a zero tolerance for gender-based violence. And with that approach and support for zero tolerance on GBV, they protect all their employees and provide an environment, a safe environment, where the victims can come forward and report incidents of violations, and where also the policies that have been put in place become or serve as a deterrent for would-be offenders. And then I also think that there are more of us are not perpetrators, and that we all have a role to play in ensuring that we protect everybody else around us by not turning a blind eye to when we notice violence and harassment happening in our workplace or in whatever area, that we should speak out against it, because we are also the catalysts, we are the change agents, and we should call out sexual harassment and speak out against it when we do observe it. And then just to support the survivors and ensure that whatever responses are put forward have a survivor-centered approach, which focuses also on the rights of the individual and protects the confidentiality of the individuals, and ensures that they are able to continue working in a safe space where there is respect, tolerance, and dignity, and that there's non-discrimination, and most importantly, that we protect the confidentiality and the identity of the survivors. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith. Thank you very much. You have been such a tremendous blessing to us through this whole webinar series. We have just loved your input and also the wonderful presentations that you've rendered. Thank you for giving us those insights again today and for recapping the points that stood out for you. And I agree. I think the biggest problem, and it coincides with everything that the presenters have said, is that there's silence on this issue. People are afraid to talk. And I think a wonderful first step would be to make sure that there's confidentiality when these things are discussed, that people will not live in that fear that anything will happen to them should they or could they, or if they would want to speak up. Craig also said something, he's not with us today, but Craig also said something wonderful in the one session. He said, if someone, the first person doesn't believe you, tell as many more others as you can. And I think that is very important. I see that Leon has asked that we write our highlights in the chat as a kind of evaluation of the webinar series. I'm going to encourage the attendees to write in the chat function the highlights as a kind of evaluation on the webinar series. What were the highlights for you? I know there's someone that only started attending today. They really appreciated the recap that you did, Leon. Let me just see who that was. We want to welcome you here today. And good news, these recordings are available. It's Mashidiso. Mashidiso, I hope I pronounced that correctly. The recordings are available on Golden Key Southern Africa YouTube channel. I'm going to hand over to Leon. Leon, as those chats come in, would you like to engage with the attendees? Let me just also say that you are able today to raise your hand. At the bottom, you'll see there's a function on your Zoom to raise your hand, and then I will unmute you. So, Leon, I'm going to give over to you. Please put your insights, everyone, in the chat function as an evaluation of the webinar series. Over to you, Leon.
Thank you, and thank you so much, colleagues. Your reflection is really touching because it shows that at the end, it's a golden thread that goes through everything. That we have actually made already a difference, and that each one of us is able to take something from here. So what we want to engage with now is to get from the participants, what is your kind of overview thoughts about this that we said, like put in the chat the highlights. But also maybe if you want to unmute and we give you that space to share with us, and put on your camera so that we can also see how people look, because some people have been here since day one and they've become part of a family now, and we don't always know how each other look. And it would be nice to see faces and also connect with you like that in a humane way. But the second part is, what would you like to see from your side? There are many students in here. And it's nice and it's wonderful because it means that at the end of the day, we also touch on something that is really in the research demand. But also, we want to use this platform for you to come and share some of your research with us. And would you be interested to do that? And can you maybe negotiate that your supervisor can just give you permission to come here and share with us? What are you doing? What's it about? And if you have findings or results, can you share that with us? And we will then broadcast it in a sense of, in our networks, we will advertise and we'll bring people in. And in some spaces, you can even report it as a kind of a research output because you are actually part of a webinar or a seminar in this space. So think about this. And then for those people who are activists, people who are working across the globe in different spaces, who are NGOs and so on, don't you want to come and share with us some good practices? What are you doing and how's it working and what doesn't work, so that we can learn from you, that we schedule like this monthly sessions, and then you just choose a slot and you come and share with us a bit of an overview of the work that you do. And then we learn from each other, that we create this whole learning network here and also ability to share with each other. The other thing is that what we can also think about as we open the floor, what is it that you think we can do to have impact? What would be one or two things that we can take from now and do together before the end of the year? Because in South Africa, we're initiating soon the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and the abuse of children. Sometimes the sad thing is that's when a lot of people suddenly step up and be visible and audible. But we want to change that to a 365-day event, like some people in Sweden say that they have an all-day activism. And so what is it that we can do in this period? In South Africa, it's also Breast Cancer Month. And there's a lot of discussions about breast cancer. It's one of the biggest, highest number of cancers among women in South Africa. And it's connected to gender-based violence too, because a lot of women are very much defining their womanhood in the breast. And it is because of the imaging that is given predominantly by a patriarchal male-dominant society. And that makes it that a lot of women actually keep quiet till it's too late. And that's where we lose a lot of women that could have been prevented and even cured. And so we need to also play our role. How can we raise awareness around breast cancer, but even, women's health and men's health in this space too, because it's also to do with that. So with that, I'm going to ask Tanya and colleagues to help me. When people raise their hands, you can unmute. You will be called out by Jonita, just to say we see you, and then we can open it. I see Anne already have opened via hashtag for Sabulani Music Initiative and Coral Against Gender-Based Violence. I would like to hear more about it. Please share with us. And let's talk. We have a few minutes left. Let's just hear some voices so that we can talk. Over to the platform. If we see any hand raised, just raise your hand, and then we acknowledge you and you open your microphone to talk to us.
I see Tracy has a hand up. Tracy, you're allowed to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, I don't know how to switch my camera on. How do I do that? If you would like me to.
Natasha, would you please like to put on the camera for Tracy? On my side, I only see a microphone. I don't see a video camera. Let's just ask Natasha, who's the host, to see if she can open the video channel. I think, Tracy, if you can continue, we will try on the back end here with the technicalities to put on your video as well.
Jonita, just a quick thing. I'm allowed to unmute, but with regards to the cameras, they're unable to switch on there.
Okay, Tracy, we can put on your mic, but not your camera at this point in time, but you're more than welcome to proceed. Thank you.
All right. All right. I'm unmuted, I think. I can't have a camera, unfortunately. I would have liked to speak to you. I'm going to give you guys a very, very selfish and personal reflection. I was a victim, or I am a survivor of abuse. This happened about 3 months ago. And in a space of 5 days, I was just submitted to, I guess, emotional abuse, violence, attempted murder, sexual assault, and everything that has happened has been so coincidental. And Mr. Roots referred to this, everybody's referred to this thread. So Mr. Roots said, it came at the perfect time because I have an amazing psychoanalyst and a great personal coach who's helped me to deal with it. So right now I'm at a space where I can actually talk about it, and I would like to talk about it. And receiving this invitation to the gender-based violence webinar, unfortunately, and I'm embarrassed to say, before I would not have generally maybe attended because it did not affect me. I thought Professor Nkotula Mazibuko, I think, said, why didn't she leave? And I believe myself to be an intelligent woman. I believe I am strong and independent, and these things will not happen to me. And I'm a social sciences student. I have 3 postgraduate degrees. I'm supposed to see these things. And I did not see red flags. I did not. And it happened to me, and I afterwards found out I was being recorded and my devices were hacked, and there was so much going on that I was not aware of. So I don't want anybody to feel ashamed. I don't want anybody to feel, because it is what you feel. You feel ashamed. You feel, how did I let this happen? How did I let someone, and you didn't let anything. Somebody did something horrible and terrible to you, and you do not owe them anything. You are not responsible for their behavior. You didn't bring this upon yourself. You didn't cause it. And it took a while for me to realize this, because I'm a type A personality, so I want to be in control. And if you think you're in control, you're kind of delusional. I have learned. So I want to say thank you to everyone who has participated in this, who has shared the information. I'm very disappointed that Craig only had one session, because I would have liked so much to hear more about that perspective. And the reason I got involved in this webinar series, and why I attended every session, is I wanted to see where I can get involved. Who is on this forum? Who is on this platform? Who can I coordinate with? Who can I work with to create awareness, to talk to people, to help other people through this? Because from experience, I can say fortunately, I did not die, but it is a crushing and a devastating thing to happen to someone. And at first, you don't know how you will survive. And honestly, I don't know if I will ever be able to trust someone again, if I will ever be able to be in a situation like that again. But right now, in myself, I am growing stronger. I am being a little bit more fine every day. And I'm very proud of that. And I would like to say to everyone at Golden Key, Discovery, everybody who spoke, from Sweden to Nigeria to Zimbabwe to everywhere, it is a comforting feeling to think I have allies. As I said, I'm being very selfish, everywhere. And that is fantastic. And I would like to be an ally to anyone else as well. So that is what I wanted to say. So thank you for allowing me the space to share. And I just want to say lastly, again, please talk out, speak up. If you aren't sure of something feels weird, but you think you're being neurotic, trust your instincts, and never ever take responsibility for somebody else's actions. You are not responsible when somebody hurts you. So yes, everybody, guys, we are strong and we can get through everything, and we have to work together to make that happen. And yes, so thank you for listening to me. Thank you for allowing me to share, and thank you for this platform. I honestly, from my perspective, it was a blessing. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you very, very much. It took great courage for you to speak up. We are so proud of you. I'm going to hand over to Leon. Before I do, I just want to ask Tracy, I see comments in the chat function of people that want to collaborate with you. Please, would you mind to share your information, should you wish to do so, in the chat function, in order for us to communicate and convene with you further. I want to give over to Leon. Leon, I see there's more hands there in the attendee section. Would you like to continue for us to engage in dialogue?
Yeah, maybe just to invite all colleagues, if you feel comfortable to share your email address with us, because we can per day pull down an attendance list, but we cannot see contact details. Please do not share in this space any cell phone numbers. That you can rather do one by one when you have established good repertoire. because we know that we are also in a space that this is a vulnerable space. So we ask if you feel comfortable sharing your either work or personal email. We will treasure it with the utmost confidentiality amongst ourselves, as we are also advocating for that, so that we can stay in touch with you. We'd like to also further keep on checking in if you're okay. And also there's a lot of things in the pipeline that we'd like to invite you. From your point of view, we need somebody like you, Tracy, to come and talk to our students. They are often in that space as you are now. And also by talking comes healing and everything there. Okay, can I open the floor then for Anne? I see Anne have raised her hand and dropped
Yes.
Hi,
And you should be
everybody.
able
It's
to-
been such a
There
great
you go.
experience. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for such a wonderful platform. It's actually been a bit of an eye-opener for me with all the different structure of these webinars. It's been very valuable in terms of it wasn't just a one-dimensional subject. And I think as Shirley has advocate for men in terms of how I believe that I can help a man, a young boy, to be able to see the different sides of things in life. And in order for them to be able to see the different sides, that helps me or helps everybody. And I think that that also kind of like puts it into perspective for them. And also, perhaps, as I've said before, it also saves a victim. This is what my take is on it. And that's why I work so much with the men in terms of being able to guide them in the right direction, because it helps me. Dealing with a young man is a lot easier than dealing with a victim. So I just wanted to go to, very quickly, I just wanted to talk to Tracy or to everybody. I'm also a victim of violence. I was brutally dealt with when I was only 16 years old. It was a very traumatic time for me when you don't even know what the world is about, and you're only 16 years old. This ended in a pregnancy, and the pregnancy was very not looked upon in the right light, when we say, if we can put it that way. And it just was an experience that I would never wish upon anybody. How, Tracy, I agree with you, is that, you don't need to have, don't need to remain a victim. And I think that this is what my saving grace was, is that I refused to become a victim after I had left the situation. And I agree with you that to be an advocate for somebody is always the greatest reward that I personally can get. I think being an advocate for somebody when they've lost their voice, way too many victims actually lose their voices because they are not taken seriously. They are told that they are inadequate. And I don't believe that anybody is inadequate, especially at the hands of somebody else. So, Tracy, I heard everything you said, and I'm very impressed, and I'm very thankful that you managed to get out. And I hope that your journey will continue to be extremely fruitful. And I have your email address, and I would like to stay in touch with you, as Shirley and I both work together in webinars. We try and do as much as what we possibly can. So I just wanted to say to everybody that put up this platform for us, I'm very, very grateful. I have learned so much in a broad spectrum, and I thank you all for putting up with us, or me, with all my comments and my points of views. I'm very straightforward, and I'm very vocal, but I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate you all, and I appreciate having this platform for the knowledge that I've actually gained. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Anne. And, there's never a voice too loud than in this space. So we are also sending to you a lot of blessings and thank you for being this person that you are, and that people can actually come also talk to you from a personal point of view. And that is sometimes where the heart meets the heart, when people go through the same experiences. That helps a lot of people to actually get to the other side and become the victor. So it's very important that we hear you, and it's very important the work that you do. Even in Sweden, I saw previously you mentioned that there is a bit of an escalation due to COVID. In South Africa, we had the same issue, that we see a tremendous increase due to COVID, due to lockdown. And that raised us a big concern for us, that we're still not in safe spaces across our societies. Doesn't matter where we are. So I'm going to give Shirley also a hand. I see she did raise it, and then Masidiso after her. Shirley, do you want to share with us a bit? Okay.
I didn't raise my hand.
Shirley, you should be able. Is it Sharon?
No, it wasn't. No, I didn't raise my hand. No, must be an error. No
maybe
problem.
Sharon.
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
Sharon
okay.
raised her hand. Sorry.
Okay. But Shirley, talk to us quickly. Just a bit that we hear your voice too, please.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Professor Leon. It was a very inspiring, good 11, was it 11 sessions? I know Annie's been keeping me informed and reminding me about the sessions, not to miss them. We're running workshops, Annie and I, on preventing gender-based violence and on the role of men, youth, and fathers in preventing or ending gender-based violence. We've trained 300 social workers. We've trained 70 employees from the banks. We have a session, I think, in 2 weeks' time with the men. We're working with the Department of Social Development, Gauteng, with the Men's Forum and Men Against Abuse. And we're quite impressed with the speakers and the panelists here. And I'm not sure whether you would also be willing to be part of some of our sessions, because we have ongoing sessions with different target groups. And
Absolutely.
Tracy could enjoy it. Tracy could also be part of the workshops with Annie and I. Thanks very much.
Thank
I
you,
would love
Shirley.
to. Sorry.
Yeah, please, you got now a whole network. We hope to get some emails, if not all, but I'm sure we, through our marketing platforms, can reconnect also with some of the colleagues from the beginning who didn't able to stay with us till the end. But yeah, please, Shirley, we are now a network that you can tap in, and we'd love to work with you and also invite you to work with us. So Sharon, can I give you your chance, please? I think it's my project assistant, Sharon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Leon, it's me. I just want to say thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to express myself in relation to combating the gender-based violence. My name is Sharon. I'm a project assistant at the Resando Project, and I'm also a master's student at University of South Africa. One of the highlights for me in this webinar is that instead of having one lens looking at gender-based violence, the presenters were able to look at different approaches in dealing with violence. So what stood out for me is the role of religion in combating gender-based violence. The reason for that is that as Christians, we are looking at religion as a safe space for us, whereby we have our peace, our mind are cheerful in that regard, in that spaces. But a lot of things can be can go around within churches that people are not aware of, because the assumption is that it's a safe space. But there are a lot of abuses that happens within that sphere. So I just want to say thank you so much for bringing that into light, because I think that it's an area that still need to be more explored. And also, again, with some of the survivors who are sharing their experiences of gender-based violence, I just want to say thumbs up for that, because my study, although it's not related to gender-based violence, but there's a theme that has came up with a lot of women being victim of gender-based violence. Some of them are not actually, they feel like they don't have a voice. In a sense that whenever they tell people, they don't take them seriously. So it takes courage. It takes a lot of devotion. It takes a lot of self-discipline in terms of breaking away from that chain of being abused. And I just want to say they really motivate me a lot in terms of that. And I applaud them for that. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Sharon and colleagues. Yeah, this is how we also try to, from our side, to bring our young people into this space and to help them with like job creation. And I encourage us, because we know one of the biggest pull factors is the issues of employability too. And so this is also, I want to encourage you, please look out for one young person and see if you cannot maybe employ them. Matsadiso, your name, your hand was temporarily up. Do you want to maybe close the session with us?
Hi, okay. My name is Barbara, Matsadiso Barbara Baisang. I'm from an organization called Curious Future Movement. We are providing support and counseling for the victims of gender-based violence here in Sasolburg in the Free State. I'm so excited to be part of this webinar, although it's my first time and certainly the last time that the webinar is continuing. From my side also, I've gone through some experiences of gender-based violence personally as a child and as a young adult. And it's very, very important that we speak about this. Every time when I'm given an opportunity to do outreaches, I tell people that the only person who has to be irritated when they hear the gender-based violence being spoken about is just the perpetrator. Then everybody else must please listen, because at some point you don't know how it's going to affect you. It might not be you personally, but you might find one of your family members maybe being exposed to it in any way. So, and one thing that Professor highlighted about the family, going back to the families, what I liked is like there are so many secrets in the families, especially with regard to gender-based violence, because where it normally starts is from our homes, it's from our family. You find we protect our sons, our uncles, our husbands, we protect them, thinking that it just happened once, and we don't know what the perpetrator intends to do. If they intend to continue with it, then they go to the neighbor's child, some even get employed at the schools where they are more exposed to girls, young girls, who becomes their prey. And so, especially if we can address it mostly in the family, even though I understand her point was going back to the family victims, because I believe, like I always make a scenario where an uncle rapes a child, then you as a sister, the mother of the victim, you have to agree with your mother, who is the mother to the uncle, to keep this a secret. And now nobody worries about how as a mother to the victim feels, and how does the victim feels, especially when they are now subjected to staying with the perpetrator, seeing the perpetrator every day, such things, because we want to keep it as a family secret, that what would other people think, or what would other families think of our family. So for me, I think if we can address the family issue mostly, speak about it in our families, and make it known that it's not tolerated in our families, then I think we would have tried to do something for the society, for the community that we are living in. Because if the family is keeping it a secret, then they're exposing the community to the perpetrator carrying it on. Because I said, as a victim, I call myself now an overcomer, because one of the attempts almost happened in the family, in my family home. So, and my first rape as a child happened in my friend's home. So, because they were protecting an uncle who has been doing it to them, and me being the victim at that time, I did not know that this is something that he's always been doing to them. So hence I'm saying, with families, if we can try to go there, honestly, we would have helped a lot of innocent people to not be exposed to this gender-based violence. Thank you so much for the platform.
Thank you, Masidi. So it was really nice and encouraging to hear also the work that you do in community there. And yeah, it's really appreciated. Your footprint is definitely visible and there. Aquilai, if you are able to maybe unmute as a last speaker for us.
Let me promote you to panelist, Aquila. You should be able to unmute now. Let's check. Are you able to unmute? Let's just give Aquila a moment. Sometimes it does.
This thing. No, I finished all the washing today.
Sometimes it does take a little while to unmute. Let's see. Aquila, are you able to unmute?
The second load. I did a third load, I think. It was easy to bring Segis from upstairs.
So I think, Leon, I think he or she might be having trouble unmuting at the moment. I would just like to say from the Golden Key Southern Africa office, this has been quite a journey. While we try and get Aquila to unmute, it has been quite a journey. And I've been sitting here fighting back the tears because of all the courage it took for the victims today to speak up. And really, from the bottom of my heart, I really experienced that the goal that we set out to achieve when we started this has been achieved, but it's also the start of something new. This is not the end. I know Aquila's comment was that they want to know when the next sessions will transpire. We as a panel will get back to you on social media with regards to the way forward. It has been quite a journey to all our collaborative partners. We could not have done this without you, UNISA, Vitality Wellness, South AIDS, Father Nation. You are also special. Thank you for stepping up to the plate when we presented this to you, and for saying that you are you have a passion for community and a passion for humankind. And the presenters, the guest speakers, the panel, you have been amazing. The attendees, we support you, we love you, we appreciate you. It has just been amazing thus far, and especially for to Leon, who has walked this journey very closely with me. I just want to say thank you for all your insights, and your support has been amazing. It has just been so wonderful to work with all of you. I don't know, Leon, if you have any last comments before we end this session. Just to reiterate, these sessions will be available, the recordings, on our YouTube channel, Golden Key Southern Africa. For anyone that from my side wants to reach out to me or to Golden Key, you can either email sacommunication@goldenkey.org, or you can email southafrica@goldenkey.org. Thank you, Tracy Oldewager. She says thank you to Leon and myself. Tracy, tremendous experience hearing you share your story today. We would definitely like to sound board with you in the future, and everyone that have shared their details. Thank you, Patricia, for organizing. Patricia Mapipi says thank you for organizing this webinar. So with that, I give over to Leon. Any last remarks, Leon? Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. I'll keep it brief and short and say thank you so much to Golden Key for also collaborating with us. And colleagues, this is part of a much bigger collaboration that we're busy putting in place. And we will like to bring you along on this collaboration, everyone who's here and who's willing to share your contact details. We will pull it from the chat later on and just compile a kind of a contact list. And then we'll stay informed that every month we will do a check-in. We will give you the dates proposed, and you can then say to us that this session you are willing to talk a bit about the work that you do, or you are willing to talk a bit more about your life story, or you just want to raise something from your research, or you just want to talk. Let's do that we stay every month in contact. Next year, there will be another series. We will spread this over a longer period out so that we can also manage your availability. And then, yeah, we will definitely take baby steps, because baby steps is one step forward. It's not backwards. So we will take baby steps. And with your spirit and our spirit and our humanity in Africa, we will make the difference. I'm very confident. So from UNISA's side, thank you so much for everything, and stay blessed. And remember, you are a beautiful soul in a human body. And so don't let other people define you, who you were meant to be and who you're supposed to be. Let it be something that you believe in, and then you see life will happen to you. So we say bless and stay well and look after yourself, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe and keep well. You may now leave this webinar series by clicking leave at the right bottom end of your screen. Thank you, everyone. Bye.